Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. If you've been around the block a few times, you kind of know what is possible and what is impossible, what is less likely and more likely to occur. And if you pay attention and you use the mother of knowledge, which is skepticism, you might get a close to a reality view of what's going on, or an answer. Since the war in Ukraine started, unprovoked by the Russian military and its allies, if you want to call them that way, or stooges, whatever they are, the Russians in general and the forces, the Russian troops in particular, were called all kind of names, and evidence was provided by the Western media and the Ukrainian media to support the claims that the Russians are just evil. I covered an article written by a Russian-German expert, a leader of a European group, important group of democracy and so on. I can't remember the name of the title of the video I made, but anyway, this guy was saying that the Russian nature is inheriting aggressive, and it made some points as if Russians are a certain kind of really evil people as a whole, because that's their nature and that's their culture, traditions. This is what this guy claimed, and the mass media portraying and day and night the Russians are just killing innocent people in Ukraine, which again, with skepticism, I don't doubt that happened. I just have question. I'm skeptical of the volume, the number that we are told. First, I don't deny that happening because that's a war, but I do not deny the fact that most likely it happens in reverse as well. But we don't hear about that because if you've been around the block a few times, you know how things are ran in this world. We have an article here that touches on two main points. One is Ukraine has no constraints on aiming military targets in Russia. So that's the first point, which is Ukraine has the right to hit military targets in Russia. I've been saying that from the very beginning, since Russia has or reserves its right to hit military targets within Ukraine because of the unprovoked attack on Ukraine, remember? Then Ukraine at least can return the favor. They being the Ukrainians, were limited by certain kind of forces not to do so. Military forces and diplomatic forces, I think. And they were told, you don't do this, don't do this. Now it seems like it's open season for that. Remember, the Ukrainians hit a few military airfields deep inside Russia. Now let's see what's going on with this article. That's the first point that this article makes, and the more important one is going to be about the Russian nature. That this guy right here, if he would say this, this is Danilov. He's one Ukrainian official, head of the security, blah, 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 got a big title and a big head, but a small brain. I can tell you that by his previous statements. This guy here makes a claim or statement that if he would make it in the free world, he would be called xenophobic, racist, all the phobic and all the, you know what I mean. Because he attributes a certain kind of trait to a group of people, in this case, the Russians. It's like, I know, you say the Romanians are all stupid, or the Romanians are stupid. Well, that's a xenophobic statement. But this guy makes a even worse, I would say. And he bases it on the evidence provided by the newspapers that the Russians are as they say they are. So, as I said, this article comes from New Voice of Ukraine, January 28, 2023. Ukraine has no constraints, end quote, on aiming military or on aiming, blowing up, actually, military targets in Russia, said Danilov, and I agree with that. Ukrainian forces, I don't think he cares if I agree or not, but I don't care about many things, but I still memorize them. Ukrainian forces have no restrictions on attacking military targets on Russian territory, the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, NSDC, not Washington, D.C., NSDC, Alexei Danilov said in an interview with RFE/RL S's Ukrainian service radio Svoboda on January 27, when asked whether Ukraine could get permission. Do you hear that? I thought the Ukraine just fights the Russians. Oh, gets permission from whom? To get permission, that means subordination. To use weapons supplied by partner nations. No, if they are partners, you can't ask for permission. That means you just do it. It's equal. Partner nations to launch preemptive strikes on military targets in Russia itself. Danilov answers that, and I'm quoting, only military objects that are directly related to those processes taking place at the front would be attacked. So remember, only the military, they will not hit anything else. And I hope they don't. So far, the Ukrainians never confirmed any wrongdoings when facts were provided and were made available. Remember those Russian troops that surrendered, about what, were 15 or 12 or 10? They were on video, and that surrendered, remember, in that little yard, and they were mown down. They were killed while laying on their bellies. Why? Because a crazy came out of a house and started shooting. The guy was obviously eliminated, and then the Ukrainians decided to kill all the other ones that were face down. They were not shooting at anyone. And that the Ukrainians solved the problem by saying, well, we will educate the Russian military how to properly surrender. So that was their answer. They didn't say they didn't do it. So there is a video. I watched the video when all the Russians are surrendering, laying on their bellies, face down, like this, properly. And then the last guy shows up and starts shooting, and that's when it stops. That gets eliminated. And then you have drone pictures with those guys face down with bloody heads and so on. Boom, boom, boom. That means they were killed right there. But that was not a war crime or anything. So that's just that. But let's go back to the article and see what these guys are saying. So, yes, they're entitled to hit within Russia military targets. And now we're going to go to the second part of the article. And here, read this little sentence. We are not Russians, and we do not destroy critical infrastructure facilities, hospitals, kindergartens, and schools. And the Russians in general, is not the Russian troops, some Russian troops, is the Russians. So it's a generalization, and it says that we don't destroy infrastructure facilities, bad, right? Hospitals, bad. Kindergarten, bad. Schools, bad. Basically, these are all under the umbrella of war crimes and, bad things. So the Russians doing this, you call the whole Russians as such. Now, if you would say this in, let's say, United States, and you say, well, I'm not, and you call a certain kind of group, I'm not violent, I'm not stealing, I'm not, doing certain kind of things that, other people are doing, which, you know what I mean, then you would be called, for good reason, racist, xenophobic, and blah, blah, bomic, tudunomic. So, this is what they said they will do, and here you see the examples they give about the drones in December 5, December 26, when the Ukrainians attacked the airfield in Engels and in Saratov Oblast, Engels 2 airfield, And then all those things were legitimate targets because they were military targets. They were, and they could do it, and they did it. The problem is, I think Ignat came, another Ukrainian official, and said that now they can reach Moscow. Well, well, well. When you say that, and I covered that in a video. He said that we proved that we can hit all those military airfields. That means we can also reach Moscow. What is that? Hey, Danilov, what is that? And he's part of your government. So anyway, what I'm trying to say here is, one, the Ukrainians obviously, and I said this for many times, for many months already, many times, that they could, but they're not allowed. That's how it was. They were not allowed to hit within Russia. And yes, they blown up certain kind of areas in Russia, in Belgorod, if you remember, just to mention one. Crimea, if you want to mention another one. Kerch Bridge, another one. And I'm pretty sure there are some other ones too, but the Western mass media. Anyway, but you hear every day what the evil Russians are doing, which gets me to the second subject. That shows how this guy looks at the Russians. Obviously, you can say, well, I mean, they're talking about Russian military, not about the Russians per se. Well, that's an attitude. That's an attitude that this guy is having towards another group. Take it however you want. Can he express his opinions? Yes, he can express his assessment. Yes, he can do that. But in the same time, I can express mine. I hope. But anyway, this is it. Hit within Russian territory, and the Russians are, as you said, they are, or you imply by telling us that they destroy Canada and all that, which I'm pretty sure it happened. And that's it. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.